recording, and it's recording now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Toronto DevOps Enterprise DevOps User Group. The user group has been around for 2-3 years now. It's been a while. We meet every second Thursday of the month. Today is Wednesday. I realized that. And to be honest, I booked it by mistake. But it worked out for presenters, worked out for me, worked out for everybody. So the next meeting is on second Thursday. And the next meeting we have is going to be on the test automation and how to use it in the agile teams. The presenters are really, really good in that area. So again, if you're interested in the test automation, please attend. If you know somebody who might be interested, share that link. We meet every second Thursday of the month. The topics vary, but they're always DevOps related. It's related to DevOps processes, people, tools, technologies, and so on and so forth that work inside the enterprise. Not the unicorn shops, but inside the enterprise, 9 to 5 kind of shops, where most of us work. If there are topics that you would like to hear on or present on, please let us know. We are always looking for good speakers. Again, if you're interested in a specific topic, let us know. I know quite a few people, so I can always find the person who can talk on the matter. Okay. Any questions that you have before we start? Anybody has any questions? All right. Okay. So today we have, and again, apologies if I butcher your name, Baruch from Jfrog, who will be talking on the best practices in implementing a data image promotion pipelines. I honestly found myself, even on the projects I have right now, it's a very, very good topic to cover, because it's going to come in handy one way or another. Without further comments, I'm yielding the floor to the presenter. It's all yours. Please take away.
Thank you, Max. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. I mean, I've been to a couple of meetups in Toronto in person in the last, when it was a thing, and obviously, great city, great community. Looking forward getting back to all of you in person, bringing you some swag. We're going to talk about that in a sec. But
in person,
today we're going to talk about, huh?
In person? That might not happen for a while, but
well, you will invite me when it will happen.
We definitely will. Thank you.
That's the idea, right? That's the idea. But I'm carrying gifts when I come, so it's a win-win. So yeah, best practices in implementing container image promotion pipelines. One disclaimer, I know that there are different containers, there are different implementations, but most of us still consider containers as in Docker containers, and this is what I'm going to talk about, mostly Docker containers. So with this disclaimer aside, this is a Venn diagram. The software that you know really well and the software that you like are usually different things, and the more you know the software, usually the less you like it. It's literally like the sausage factory. And it's the same with Docker, it's the same with containers. We like it, but we don't really trust it. We're going to talk about how can we reestablish this trust. And my name is Baruch Sadogursky, and I am the Chief Sticker Officer of Jfrog. It means that when the in-person meetups will come back, I will come with stickers and t-shirts and tons of awesome swag and a new talk, and we'll have hell of a time. And for now, the most important piece on this slide is my Twitter handle @jbaruch, and this is the easiest way to communicate with me now online. This is the most important slide of this presentation. If you go to jfrog.com/show notes, you will find the slides already there. The video, this is Max, why I got excited when he told me that you are recording. Please share with me or with Ari the recording when you have it. We will upload it to Jfrog show notes, and it will be in the same place. All the links to everything that I'm going to talk about and mention, all the resources are there. A place to comment, to rate, and a very nice raffle. Tonight we are going to raffle out a Baby Yoda Lego set. So if you're fans of Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and or Lego, that's a great chance. We're not a lot of people, so you have a very good chance of winning. Please go and participate. Now, if somewhere down the line you're like, what was this URL again? Because I really want to see this link to this particular resource. The URL is on the bottom of every slide. My Twitter handle is also on the bottom of every slide. So whenever you feel to follow me, please do. So with that, let's start talking about patterns. When we need a pattern, for example, promotion, we ask ourselves, do we have an existing pattern? And if we do, can we use it as is, or what needs to be changed? How can we adapt it? With CI/CD patterns, containers or not, this is something that we do for years. And by 4 years, I mean like more than 20 years. And obviously, we know exactly how to promote, how to build CI/CD pipelines. How do we do that? We have the promotion pyramid. We have builds that are a lot in the beginning, and then as they go through quality gates, they become less and less builds, but the tests become more and more elaborate. They take the longer time. They check for more things. In the end of the day, they end up in production. I'm 100% sure you're all familiar with that because you are awesome developers. Another view on the same promotion is the pipeline view. In the pipeline view, you have your sources, it's your application sources, it's your Docker files, whatever it is, and then it's all crunched by the CI server, and what is getting out of the CI server are the binaries that then you start to promote. And you start to promote them by deploying them to a corresponding environment, like the integration or the system testing or the staging. You run tests in this particular environment, and then if those binaries satisfy your quality requirements, all kinds of tests, quality tests, security tests, compliance tests, stress tests, performance tests, whatever they are, you move them into a new area. The new area, again, you deploy to a new environment, and this goes all the way to production. Again, I'm sure you all know that. I'm not sure if you all do it, but at least you all know that's for sure. Now, you say, okay, how it's different with Docker? Well, Docker has a very interesting way of building. And I mean Docker build. Docker build is simple and powerful way to pack your containers with all kind of stuff. And it's so simple and so powerful that a lot of people incline to Docker build all the things. What do I mean Docker build all the things? Instead of promoting the binary after building it once, they tag their Docker file with different status. It can be Docker file which is in development, Docker file in staging, Docker file in production, and then just rebuild in each and every environment. And looks like it works, right? I mean, there is nothing technically impossible. You just rebuild on every stage, and you end up with the same outcome. But is it the same outcome? I will claim that it's not. That fast and cheap builds are not always the way to go. And they're not always the way to go because when you look at the typical Docker file, and I wanted to come with like a ridiculous example and write some horrible Docker file, but I didn't have to. I just went to the internet and find tons of Docker files which are as horrible as possible. And again, just a reminder, jfrog.com/show notes. If you go there under resources, you will find a live link to this file. It is real life. Everything is this file except of 1 or 2 lines is resolving a latest version of dependencies, a latest version of the base image, a latest version of Python and Node.js, and then a latest version of the application itself. There is one line creating a directory, which is not a dependency manager, and this is just wrong. And then you say, well, that's true, but we can fix it. Well, let's fix it. We can nail the version of the base image to a version. We can say, well, not the latest Ubuntu, but 1904. Is it better? Well, it's better to an extent. Yes, we won't get the latest version, which is what, 2009, almost 2104. Instead, we will keep getting 1904. But there have been 2 years since 1904 is out. And in those 2 years, Canonical, who is the maintainer of the Ubuntu image, pushed a bunch of changes directly into this version. And that will be mostly security patches. While it's important to get security patches, it's still something that will change under our hands. Every time we build this Docker file anew, there is a very good chance that we will get different results because it downloads new version of Ubuntu 1904. The real way to actually tell Docker to go and grab the exact file from Docker Hub is using a fingerprint. Now, if I'm using a fingerprint SHA-256, I can be 100% sure that the version of Ubuntu that I download now will be absolutely the same. The real question now is, what version is it? How can you know which version of Ubuntu I'm downloading now? You know what? Maybe it's not even a valid fingerprint. Maybe it's my cat now going through my keyboard, and this is what it typed. There is actually no way for me to know which version of Ubuntu am I using. Now, what about the rest of them? How about those? Whether you can lock those to a version and whether this version is truly immutable, know people who know apt-get. If you know apt-get, I can ask you, hey, can I pin the version down? And you can tell me yes or no. And then I'll ask you, is it immutable? You can tell me yes or no. And then you can ask me, and then I can ask you, what about transitive dependencies? In the end of the day, if you know apt-get really well, you can tell me, yes, you know what? I'm sure it's immutable. But you know what? How about this? MVN clean install. Which version of dependencies it installs now? If you don't know what is it and it's Maven, you can say, well, I have no idea. If you know Maven, you can say, well, yes, you can go into the POM file and nail down the versions. If you know Maven really well, you will tell me, well, I have no idea. Because the way Maven behaves, it is almost impossible to nail down all the transitive dependencies to their version. So in the end of the day, you need to have tons of knowledge about each and every package manager and dependency manager in the world in order to create truly immutable Docker file. And you know what? What about that? Every command that you run might, as a side effect, and sometimes as a transitive side effect, bring different dependencies and change your environments under your fingerprints and under your fingertips. And then what is happening is that while you build, every time you get a slightly different container. And do you remember how I mentioned we don't really trust Docker? We have this feeling that, hey, I'm going with it in the production, but I'm kind of not 100% sure what is being deployed. This is why. Now, how do we fix it? There is really only one way. we, instead of rebuilding, we need to promote immutable and stable binaries. We need to build once, and then, as in the first diagram, go through quality gates with the same binary. Now, I keep mentioning those gates. What's up with those gates? Why those gates are so important? Those gates are so important because those are the gates that won't allow QA to test dev images or staged images which weren't tested, or obviously going to production with images that shouldn't go to production. You understand that? How can we guarantee that whatever we have in production are only the artifacts that went through the entire pipeline, through each and every quality gate? Now let's see how we do it. In order to set up those gates, we need to build a system that will be separated for different environments. We want to separate dev from prod to a level that a mistake is almost not possible. There are different ways to achieve it. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So again, in one of the slides, previous slides, you said that I cannot trust. I have to use the like a hashtag code of the image to make sure that it's consistent, right? To make sure that I'm getting what I'm supposed to. So again, that makes sense when you're getting something outside. When you're using the internal ones, right? You like again this hash code again. While it's very predictable, you're getting predictable results. It's also now there's no semantic versioning, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, what you asked about the outside, kind of implying that it's different when you use your internal registry. This is where the money is. You're 100% correct. The only way to go around it, and we're going to mention it soon enough, is having control of your base images. If you know exactly which version of Ubuntu you have in your internal registry, you can just use latest. You can use 1904. You can use whatever you like, and you will still get a repeatable result. But look how here in this Docker image that I found online, they actually use Ubuntu without the host name. They use Ubuntu from Docker Hub. They use the latest version or the latest dynamic tag, which is 1904. This is what it is. It's a dynamic tag. It can change without any guarantees that they will repeatedly get the same binary.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
All right. Okay, so let's go back to the question, how do I separate development for production? And there are a lot of options that you can do it. The first, and this is kind of what implied by Docker documentation, is using Docker built-in metadata. Docker has metadata, labels, and labels are key value pairs that you can put on basically everything, including obviously images. And you can say, for example, label status equals staging, or label maturity equals QA, something like that. And then when you deploy to the right environment, let's say now you have a Kubernetes cluster in your QA, you write an admission controller that will check those labels, and if those labels are not status equals QA or maturity equals staging, you will not let this this image to be deployed in this container, in this cluster, which is great. But I don't know if you noticed, just over those two sentences and two simple examples that I said, I managed to confuse what is the name of the label, what is the value of the label. One time I used the name maturity, the other status, and one time I said the status was testing and the other QA. Those are free text strings. obviously it's very hard to make sure that they will always match. And obviously this is how disasters happen. So this is okay, but we can do better. What else we can use? We can use what is called Docker repositories. Repositories are spaces within the registry which can be RBAC controlled. And this is interesting because this is what we eventually want to do. We want to give each and every cluster username and password, or obviously rotatable keys or whatever, and just say, this is the space that you go to get your images. This is your username and password. If you can log in and get the images, those are the right images. If you cannot log in and get the images, obviously there is a bug, but no harm done because you won't be able to get those images and run them in the wrong environment. And this is great. The problem with repositories in Docker is that they are copy-paste from GitHub repositories. And as you know, GitHub are sources, and GitHub don't have the notion of maturity repositories for obviously a very, very good reason, because sources don't have different maturities. You remember where the sources are in our promotion pipeline? They are always before the pipeline even begins. We first take the sources, convert them to binaries, and then we retire the sources part. We don't need it anymore. And instead we start working with binaries. So the sources, GitHub, don't even have the notion of repository for staging and repository for QA, because we don't stage and we don't QA sources. We do it with binaries. So we might try and use those repositories, but really the repositories are intended for what repositories in GitHub intended, which are different projects. So this is kind of meh. Now, what we really want to do is exactly that. We want to have registry per environment. We want to have integration registry, system testing registry, staging registry, and production registry, each and every one of them completely isolated from the point of view of the cluster that consumes the images. So when a staging cluster goes to tries to pull an image to create a container out of it, it will always be from the right phase in the pipeline, just because the staging cluster doesn't know of the existence of any other registries. It has one registry that it gets all the images from. Which you say, great, okay, thank you. Now we know, let's go and start doing it. The problem is not so easy. It's Docker, it has quirks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you go back and go for this one more time? You lost me for a second.
Don't worry. So yeah.
So the separate registers per environment?
Yes.
Registries, okay.
Does it make sense?
Well, the fact that it's a lot of registries?
Yeah, the fact that the best quality gate is a separate registry. The environment doesn't know about the existence of anything else.
Yeah, it's extreme, but it's definitely the most effective.
All right. So the thing is, let me convince you that we don't care that it's extreme. And it will take me a couple of slides to get to that, because I understand why are you saying that it's extreme. And it looks like it's extreme because Docker kind of implies that you will have one registry. It implies that you have one registry on a very basic level by the format of the Docker tag. Docker tag says, look, you have the name, you have the host, you have the port, and then you have the image. That's all. There is no additional token for expressing which registry in this host do I want to use. There is no way to say, hey, under this registry, under this host, I have registries for dev, for QA, for staging, from prod. And this is so fundamental that now we really have a problem. If we want to use multiple registries, there is no simple way. And this is where Max tells us, hey, it's extreme. It's extreme because it's not built in. It's hard. I don't even know where to start. Maybe I can use crazy shit like URL rewriting, like virtual hosts and ports. When someone actually do Docker tag for a host and a port, I actually want to rewrite it and go to a different URL when I have the right registry, right? And what we want to rewrite is this simple host port busybox to actually Docker dev busybox. How can I do it? Well, this is an example of nginx. You can do the same with Apache HTTPD, with HA proxy, and with every service mesh. Basically, you say you have this port 5001, which is like a physical port. That's like you listen on that. There are requests that go there, but when there is a request that comes to the port 5001, what they really mean is going to the same registry, but to the registry, the same host, but and same port, but to the Docker dev registry. Now, I understand that it looks cumbersome and, as you mentioned, Max, extreme, but there is a better way. And the better way is when we spoke about this format of Docker tag, there is another token that we can plainly abuse. Outside of Docker Hub, when we are talking about the registry that you host, there is really no use for the username, which is usually the name of the company. Just because it's your internal registry, everybody in your internal registry are from the same organization. You don't need to specify it every time. Instead, you can use this token to specify the registry. You can say Docker tag HTTPD goes to staging. Brilliant, easy, and all we need is a tool that supports it, and we're going to show how we do it in a sec. Now, once we overcame this stupid limitation, we are now facing a completely new problem. And this is, how do we promote images from one registry to another? Now we have two registries in the same host. But there is no promote, there is no move, there is no any command in Docker that allows moving images from one registry to another, just because, as we just spoke, it never was a scenario. Because when registries are a single registry per host, moving between the registries always involves pulling, retagging, pushing, and it's fine. It's over network anyway. But now we eliminated this the network. Now we have two images which are in two registries in the same host. How can I take this image and move it to the other registry, which is exactly there, without pulling, retagging, and pushing? Let me show you the answer. This comes with the same tool that actually allows you having multiple registries per host. There are a couple of those tools on the market. Obviously, I'm here because Jfrog pays my salary. The example that I show you, and that's just an example, is of the Jfrog Container Registry, which is a free tool that you can download and use, or the Jfrog Free Tier, which is a free cloud service that you can open the account and use. No payment, no credit card required, nothing. You just use it. The way it works is that we have this notion of multiple registries within the tool. And you can see how they are all stacked here: Docker dev local, testing, staging, and prod local. Here they are. Now, on top of that, we also have two more types of registries. One is the proxy for a remote registry, and that's our Docker Hub remote. What it does is it proxies Docker Hub for you, and this is doing a number of things. First, it caches your images. Now, Docker Hub have limitations for how many pulls you can do for free during the day. Once you cached your Docker image, you won't have to pull them again and again from Docker Hub, and then you won't hit those limits. More so, if you use the cloud service that I mentioned, you actually got rid of the limits at all. It doesn't matter how many times you hit the Docker remote or Docker remote hits Docker Hub, it's all free for you, right? So now we have an entire zoo of registries. We have a bunch of local registries, we have those remote registries, but the developer don't want to know about any of that. All they want is pull base image, play with it, and then push the end result, not them, but their CI, into the right place of the pipeline automatically. And you remember what is the right place. The right place is always the entry to the pipeline, because we have to ensure that all the process works. Now, how does it work? We have a virtual registry, the Docker virtual. The virtual registry, actually, we can say it rules. We can say, okay, when someone resolves from it, go and search in Docker remote and search in all of those registries. Because for resolution, we have no limitation. It's for developer. They need to know about everything. Now, when your CI server deploys, it will always and only deploy to the Docker dev local, because you remember, this is your entry to the pipeline. Now you start the process of promotion. After you check your image, it kind of satisfies all the quality requirements, and now you want to promote it. This is done by an API call by your pipeline management software, which might be your CI server, your CD tool, or your shell script that deploys, run tests, promotes, deploys, run tests, promotes, whatever you use. Now, this promotion is within the same tool. Now, this tool has a deduplicated storage. It means that it stores all the layers only once. And since it stores all the layers only once, those promotions are immediate and free in terms of networks. There is no network, but also in terms of I/O. Even files are not copied. The only thing that changes is the visibility, how the images are shown, in which registry they shown. Now, the beauty of it that we fool the clusters into thinking they are different registries, and there are no other registries. So when we look at for a production cluster, for example, the production cluster has no idea about the existence of any other layers or images in any other maturity level, because it only knows that there is one registry that it always takes the images from. And this gives us the win-win-win we desire. So yes, we have a single point of access for multiple registries when needed, and that's the virtual thing that we spoke about. We have completely isolated environments because, as I mentioned, the images live in a certain registry, and the environment only knows about this registry and only sees what's going on there, and the promotions between them are immediate and actually free. No files are moved over the network, on the disk, or otherwise. So this is the ironclad quality gates and the true promotion pipeline for your Docker images. As I already mentioned, there are a number of tools that do that, and I encourage you to do the research and find the one that works best for you. Obviously, I will be more than happy if you give our software a try while you're on the journey of picking the right tool that manages to do promotion with Docker images. There is one more aspect that we need to remember, and this, well, while we know how to manage our own images now and how successfully promote them, the question is, what's going on with the rest of our dependencies? How can we make sure that our Docker base image never changes? You remember that's the question that Max asked, and he kind of already gave away the answer, spoiling me the entire intrigue. So the way you do it is with the proxying registry. The proxying registry is right here. You can see how the Ubuntu version, the one that we spoke about, is now living in Docker Remote Cache. And Docker Remote Cache is our in-house caching registry for Docker Hub. No matter what limitations Docker Hub imposes on you, you are safe to use the same version over and over again because it is cached in your tool. Now, there are other dependencies that you have. For example, you might have system dependencies. For example, your JDK or infrastructure, such as your Tomcat or your application itself. You can host all those in Jfrog Container Registry and obviously in Jfrog platform, and then have them safely stored and managed for you. Now, there is more. You have the same pipeline for each and every application component inside your application, right? So you have, let's say, what do you put in your Docker images? You put Java built with Maven, or you put NPM, JavaScript built with NPM, or you put their Go applications. Whatever you use, you can build the same pipeline as now we just did with Docker, using, again, free Jfrog tools. So again, there are other tools. What I want you to remember is this: own your own dependencies. Own your base image. Don't re-download it from Docker Hub every time. Own your infrastructure. Don't re-download it every time. And own your application files. Do not rebuild it every time. And now back to, again, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to get your input on this. When you have multiple application images in your registry, is there a naming convention that you recommend for those base images?
So
like a project name / service name.
Yeah. So obviously there are naming conventions firstly for registries themselves, right? And it makes sense having, as you saw, there is really no reason now not to create separate registries for everything. Just because they are free, the promotion between them is free, and even if you use base images from other registries, you actually don't copy them over just because it's that duplicated storage. You can reuse it like virtually limitless. And that means that you might consider having different registries for different projects, because why not? It's clean. You come to a registry and all you see are Docker images which are related to this project. In this project, you will have different registries based on your pipeline. In some of them, you will have dev, QA, prod. In others, you will have dev, QA, staging, prod. And then obviously there is a naming convention for those things. Now, for images themselves, well, again, you can embrace naming convention, but even better, and I'm going to show you in a sec, you can use metadata to express information about the images, and they don't have to be in the name, because in some point of time you just go ahead and it's just like too much. You put in the name of the project, the name of the application, the version, the SHA commit, the date, and the name become absolutely useless. Instead, you can use metadata to express everything which is more than just a name.
Can I make a small suggestion?
Sure.
Again, you're saying this environment based registries, right?
Right.
Maybe it's not the environment based registries, maybe it's environment type based registries, because you can have more than one dev. And do you want to have multiple registries for every dev environment, or is it
Absolutely.
one registry for dev environment type?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You want to have multiple registries for different dev environments, because if you have different dev environments, you want to limit each and every cluster to see only its own registry. This is how you simplify the work. You know what? Now I thought about a nice analogy. You know how a good object-oriented design simplifies the flow of the application? How people say, you know what, don't use a branched if else algorithm, because it's complicated, it's hard to follow, and it's very easy to make mistakes. Instead, use encapsulation and inheritance and composition and polymorphism to achieve the same results. Here, it's exactly the same. You can have one registry with tons of images, and then it will be up to your deployment logic to kind of choose which images should go there or shouldn't, and mistakes will be made. Instead, use multiple registries, as many as you need, and make them as narrow as you need in order to make sure that the deployment is as easy as you go to this registry, whatever is the last image of the application, take it. No questions asked. I don't want you as a cluster to ever have to do some kind of regex filtering based on the name of the image or some kind of flags that are in the image name of metadata. No, just go to this registry. This is yours. Whatever is there, just take the newest one and run it.
I'm still not convinced that this is the best way, because the amount of overhead it creates for the users to make sure they know which registry they grab the image from.
So who are the users, Max? When I'm talking about the users now, I really mean your clusters. And your clusters they don't care. They really don't. Whatever is there in the YAML configuration file as the registry name, this is what's going to be used. When you talk about humans, then the situation is different. And when you log into your Jfrog container registry and you see 50 different registries, you are completely overwhelmed. You have no idea what's going on, what's yours and what's not. There are two ways to battle that. The first is the virtual registries. The virtual registries, you set them up by grouping those dozens of small dedicated registries into a bigger space in which a user can find what they need. And on top of that, you control them by using RBAC access. If you have a team that works on a project, they don't have to see the rest of the registries that have nothing to do with their project. So you just set up the visibility in the way that they will only see what makes sense for them, and then they will end up with four registries. And those four registries are very clear. You have dev, staging, pre-production, production, done. So it's not overwhelming. Yes, in general, in your Jfrog container registry, you have hundreds. But for the sake of this particular project, there are four, no harm done.
No, but again, I get that. But when you said that we're going to have if we have a dev 1, dev 2, dev 3, and every dev environment has to have its own registry. That part is getting a bit more complicated.
So, all right. So maybe we have a misunderstanding here. Why do you have 4 dev environments?
We need to.
Hmm?
The client needs it.
The client needs 4. I mean, sorry. The question is, are they the same? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yes.
If they are the same and the requirements of what goes there is the same, they can obviously use the same registry. Right? The question is, are the requirements for the images that they deploy differ?
Okay,
If they are not,
I'm sorry. So there's a comment in the chat from Simon that again, what if the environments are not the same because the dev environment is used by team A and dev 2 is used by team B, right? And they just made it slightly differently because it's a dev environment, right? So it's the people are experimenting.
oh yeah, no, absolutely, that's fine. But again, the question is, what are the requirements from the images? If the requirements are the same, then you can set up a registry that will help the images that satisfy those requirements. And whatever environments need the same images, they just go there. Now, if the requirements are different, we don't want this. Well, if it's a dev requirement A, then only admit images that have A in their name. This logic is a way to disaster. What we want to do is we want to encapsulate this logic in the promotion and not in the admission.
That's okay. I'm confused, but that's okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so Jason had a great question here, and I'm just open the chat. So there are a bunch of a bunch of other good comments and questions. Sorry for not looking at it previously. Here it is. How does the local cache of Docker Hub deals with potentially mutable upstream tags? And that's a wonderful question. Let's say I have now Ubuntu latest that was cached in my Docker Hub, in my Docker Hub proxy, and now I do pull, I do Docker pull Ubuntu latest. Should now the proxy say, well, I have Docker, I have Ubuntu latest, here you go? Or should it say, well, I have the latest, but maybe it's not the latest because the latest is mutable and maybe already changed in Docker Hub? And the answer is there is a timeout flag that you put there, and you just decide how often do you want to check for latest in Docker Hub. It's a trade-off. You check too often, you run into Docker limitations, and your builds become slower because you run there and check every time as there is a new one. But if you check too seldom, then you might miss the changes of the latest in the Docker Hub. Now, the good news are that you don't want the automatic check for latest in Docker Hub anyway, because you remember, we spoke about it. The last thing you know is downloading a new dependency, which will create an unexpected binary that you will drag all the way to production without knowing that one of the dependencies changed. What you want is a controlled check for newer images. So whatever you used in production, you are going to cache forever in one of your registries. You move it there and it's there forever because you might need it in any point of time. And then you can run a test in your test environment. Give me the latest. Let's see if it broke anything. It didn't break anything. Good. I'm going to stash this latest. I'm going to save it as the one that I'm going to use for production now and run from there. I hope it answers Jason's question. We are almost done, so let me finish the presentation. I have like 4 more slides, and then we will go into more questions. So we spoke about how we own our dependencies, and now, and this is very related to what I just spoke about with Jason. Well, I want latest, right? Because latest is convenient. Latest is convenient because when someone created a new version of an internal dependency, I don't want to go into each and every Docker file and change something there. I want to say, give me the latest. I'm in dev mode. I don't give a shit that it changes. I actually want the changes. And this is a normal trade-off between static tagging and dynamic tagging. It exists everywhere. If you are familiar with Java and with Maven, you're familiar of the notion of snapshots. You can create an artifact which will be of a version snapshot, and that means basically dynamic tagging. The patches in semantic versioning is again the same context, and obviously the latest in Docker. So this trade-off of assigned ones remain unchanged and provides us with reproducible builds because it is always the same. And on the other side, when I say for dynamic tagging, give me the latest good state of image, I really don't care what it is because you already tested it and I just want to use it. This is very easy to use. The way to achieve both, and today I'm in the win-win mode for you, is, yeah, and then you don't know which version. The way to achieve both is doing double tagging. You can have an image, and this is again example from Jfrog Container Registry that you don't have to use because you have other means. For example, with Docker tags to achieve the same is, look at that. I have a latest right here, but then I have a metadata that describes that this latest actually refers to an immutable version number 26. And now I don't have a problem using latest in my system within my closed and tested environment because I can always say, aha, I use latest, but it actually was 26. I can always reproduce it. So with that, just the conclusions to remind you what we spoke about. You build only once, you separate the environments, you promote what you have built in terms of artifacts, and you own and manage your dependencies. I'm Ajay Baruch, here for you on Twitter every day. My DMs are open. Jfrog.shownotes, jfrog.com/shownotes. You go there for the slides, already there. All the links already there. The video, once Max will share it with me, and a chance of winning a Baby Yoda Lego set, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. With that, thank you very much. I think we have like 7 minutes for questions. So
again, we have as much time as you're willing to give. Just so you know, and as
yeah, no, I just
to,
have a next meeting in 7 minutes. That's why that's why I said that. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I don't know. Do you guys want? Do you want to go through Q&A first, and then do the Yoda, or do you want to do the Yoda?
So the Yoda is, let me tell you how the Yoda works. You go there, you register, and then Ari, who is our meetup manager, will do the raffle offline, I think later today or maybe tomorrow, and will let the winner know through email that you will leave there. So the raffle is offline. We can use all this time for Q&A.
Okay, excellent. We have one more question from Simon. Do you have to have a Git repo to play with this concept?
No, absolutely. There is, I mean, you need to have a Git repo to store your application sources and your Docker image. But remember, all what we spoke about starts through the promotion pipeline after your sources have been converted to binaries. The way you convert them to binaries is kind of out of scope of this discussion. You can send your files by email and then build them with a Docker file build on your machine, which we obviously don't recommend. But once you have your binaries, all that we spoke about implies.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first I want to throw a small bone to Baruch and say that the idea of taking a binary and moving it through these stages, I think, is very much widely accepted best practice in the CI/CD world, and so even
And
if
you have no idea how many people don't do it.
I deal with the real world every day, and it's amazing how far things are behind at some places.
Exactly.
But no, I just wanted to support that side of things for a second. But my question is this: so I'm totally in agreement with I want to have a limited set of things for each of my staging, QA, production sorts of environments. But for dev, I pretty much don't care. I want to leave it open to the world, and I basically want this thing to be a cache so that I don't have to deal with the Docker Hub rate limit mess. So does this support that sort of functionality out of the box, or does that require a different
absolutely. Let me go back here for a sec, here to this slide. You can see how the developer, when they resolve, they have access to everything through this Docker virtual. We really don't have this separation. We want to give as much control to the developers, since we trust them, we hire the best and all this stuff. And then we don't really limit any of that with any of that. And they stay away from the limits of Docker Hub just by using this cache of Docker Hub remote, or using our agreement with Docker Hub. If it's a cloud deployment, then they don't even bother thinking about it at all.
And this is something that we could run ourselves, or is this totally software as a service?
Yeah, no. There are two options. If you go with Jfrog Container Registry, it's on-prem. You download it, you install it, you run it yourself, and then you get exactly that. And then you are protected by using the cache. If you use the cloud service, the Jfrog platform, the free tier of Jfrog platform, then it's on the cloud as a service, so you can choose whatever works for you.
I have a question.
Sure, absolutely. I can, although I can barely hear you, but it was right.
Better.
Yeah, that's better.
Forgot my microphone again. Yeah, I find they work much better in front of your mouth, not up by your ear.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, one problem I don't see this model solving is security issues that arise from, I guess, security defects in the base image. So I can see how I could use something like this to model something similar to this, even to say I'm going to build my own base image, and I'm going to base it on Ubuntu whatever from Docker Hub, and
Perfect.
none of that matters,
Yes.
right? I build my own pipeline that says, okay, here is the base image that everybody in my company is going to run off of, and I'm going to make sure that it has all of its security checks in place and all of that stuff. But then once that's done, how do you prevent images based on a base image that has a security flaw that then patched in a future release? How do you make sure that doesn't go to prod? I'm not sure if I'm
right. No.
describing that picture very well.
Yeah, you're great. So there are two dangers there. The first danger is I've downloaded the latest and I plan to control it. I take full control of it. I move it to my registry, local registry, and I build my own base image out of it. And then I just let all the company run from it, and then I'm protected from changes. But I didn't scan it for security problems. This is done again with our tools, but also with others. If you use, for example, the Jfrog platform, the cloud platform, it comes with the security scanner that scans everything that goes into your registries. And it will say, hey, you downloaded a new image into your Docker Hub remote, and it has a known security vulnerability. So I won't let you downloading to your CI server to build your own base image out of it, or I will fail your build when you try to do that, but I will protect you from this image because I know it has problems. So this solves problem number one. There is problem number two, which is I now run on my own base image, and there is a newer version of the base image that I based off, which has security patches. How do I know that there is a new version with those important release notes? And for that, unfortunately, we don't have anything built in. What I recommend is just signing up for new version announcements in Docker Hub or elsewhere. There are services that do that, and then just make sure that you are on top of when your base image changed in Docker Hub and why, and you want to push it in order to test it and check whether your base image should migrate to it and on what schedule.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Great.
I have a quick question. Do you have a sample pipeline for promotion?
Yes. So we have a bunch of examples of all this stuff. If you go to Jfrog organization on GitHub, github.com/jfrog, you will see repositories that have different examples for all these different stuff, and it also has like exactly how that all works. Yes. So the answer is absolutely. I'll find the link, Simon. I'll find the link and I'll post it in the meetup group. Folks, unfortunately, I have to run. One more reason to invite me in person is that then I'm your hostage, and not only I'm not going anywhere after the talk, but we are going to have some drinks, and hopefully that will come sooner than later. I miss that a lot. But for now, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it a great deal. My thanks to you is obviously the raffle of the Baby Yoda. Don't miss that. And if you have any questions, @jbaruch on Twitter at your service.
Okay, thank you very much for everything. Again, if you can, I don't know where the raffle link is, or you have no
Jfrog.com show notes. That's the link. You go to Jfrog.com show notes. You will see an entry for this meetup. You go there, and there it's right there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much again. I'm gonna post the video on the YouTube. I'm gonna put the link on the meetup again, and you can take it from there.
Perfect.
Okay. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Next meeting is the second Thursday of the month. I think it's April 8th or something, and it's going to be testing automation.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.